All right, here's a question for you. When's the last time you and a few friends sat down and tried writing one single document that would determine the way millions of people over hundreds of years lived? A document that would structure the government of an entire nation? Yeah, didn't think so. Lucky for you, fewer than 100 men took a crack at it back in 1787 on behalf of the United States of America, hoping to write one document that would contain in it all the laws and instructions for how our government should function. Now don't worry, once they had their final draft, they did put it to a vote. There were 13 United States at that time, and at least 9 of them would have to ratify the Constitution, meaning they formally agreed to it, before it became official. And now, that single document, still known today as our U.S. Constitution, remains the ultimate law of the land, the most sacred code we have for how the government should look. Pretty impressive, right? I mean, no one's perfect, but hey, that we're still running things 230 years later means they must have done something right. Now, let's rewind a few years back to 1775 when the Second Continental Congress met in Philadelphia. Besides issuing the world-famous Declaration of Independence, that gathering of delegates planted the first seed of order for the new nation, which they hoped to defend from King George. That seed was a document called the Articles of Confederation, a plan for how the new U.S. government should operate, that powered the newborn nation through the Revolutionary War. Unfortunately, it had a major flaw. You see, living under a powerful king had caused the colonists a ton of trouble. So the Congress decided to give the central government, ours is in Washington, D.C. today, very limited power over the individual states. 9 of those 13 states had to give their approval before the central government could even pass a single law. See where this is going? The weight of the states overwhelmed the central trunk of government, and chaos erupted in newborn America. Having gone from a central government that was way too strong, as in the case of the king, to one that was not strong enough, Americans would need to find a balance, especially as new states joined the country in coming years. They needed a central government that could hold everyone together. And so, because gatherings of delegates from all the colonies or states for very long meetings had been successful in the past, our founding fathers decided to call yet another very long meeting in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, once again, called the Constitutional Convention. And 55 delegates from all over the states attended. And their original goal was to revise, not destroy, but revise the Articles of Confederation. But when they took the pulse of the document and thought it through together, they realized they'd be better off starting from scratch. So they torched it. And in 1787, they put their heads together to come up with something new. And here's what they decided. The central government would have more power over the states, but it would also be split into 3 different sections called branches. Each branch would have its own unique set of powers, and with the power divided 3 ways, the central government would never get too strong. The legislative branch, made up of 2 houses full of elected representatives from the different states, would come up with proposals for law known as bills. The executive branch, made up of the president and his or her closest advisors, a group called the cabinet, would receive those suggestions for law and either veto or reject them or sign off on them, turning bills into law. Judges from the judicial branch would settle any arguments over how individual laws should be applied. They also reserved the right to overrule any laws that violated the Constitution. The way that each branch puts a limit on what the others can do is called the system of checks and balances. And as one further limit on the power of the central government, individual citizens are able to vote on their choice of representatives for the legislative branch and for the president in the executive branch. Now, the delegates at the Constitutional Convention knew that they weren't the only ones with good ideas, so they made it possible for future Americans to make changes or amendments to the Constitution. It would take a ton of votes to approve an amendment to the Constitution, but even so, the first changes were made rather quickly. In the year 1788, the Constitution had just been approved and our central government met for the first time. The legislative branch that we call Congress started receiving suggestions immediately from the different states on changes they thought should be made to the Constitution. You see, a lot of people were still afraid that the central government would be too strong. Of all the changes suggested by the states, Congress voted to approve 10 of them as amendments to the Constitution. Today we refer to these first 10 amendments as the Bill of Rights. They are a shield protecting you from mistreatment by the government. Among other things, they guarantee you, the individual, the freedom to believe what you want, to say what you want, to own a weapon if you want, and to be defended in court if someone accuses you of a crime. Without this Bill of Rights or the opportunity to create other amendments in the future, who knows if the Constitution would have survived until today?